Welcome to another episode of the Soul Minded Business Podcast. This is your host, JD Ross. This is the beginning of season 3. So this podcast is going to be about new beginnings, and who doesn't need those nowadays with COVID and everything else that's going on in the world. I know I just dated this podcast, but I also would be, I think, remiss in not mentioning what's going on here. So this is going to be new beginnings. Before I get started into that, let me talk about what this podcast is about from the very beginning of this. And it is about sharing information that we know you're going to find encouraging, hopeful, helpful in your own personal journey. And not only that, during these conversations we're having with our guests, we take the information, and I personally and my family and others use it. So we kind of take bits out and we use it in our own life and our own business. That is a little bit different than just talking about the issues and doing it. We're actually applying it. So you're going to see that work throughout. So we have some really cool things going on with this new season. Before I get into the short monologue here over what looks like to have new beginnings, let me talk about what you're going to see in this season. It's going to be some YouTube mixed in. So if you want to go to YouTube and see it there, or you can hear it straight on the podcast, as you've always been able to do. And on Tuesdays, you're going to have these monologues where it's just me sharing information. Again, this is our own personal journey that we've seen and an application of what we've learned. Thursdays will be the guest, and we have a surprise coming out that we might be dropping on another day of the week. We have to wait and see. So what you're going to see in these monologues is the application of. You're going to see the application of what we're learning, and you're also going to see some businesses launched. You're going to go through that journey about how we've launched some businesses. You're going to have an opportunity to engage in those businesses. You'll see how we did it, what went well, what didn't go well. Again, the intent is to help your own personal journeys. So you're going to see those happen. So let me talk about what I mean by new beginnings. This is a new season, a new beginning. And you're going to see me do that as well, because as you know, if you've seen me in the past, there's certain things that we all need to work on, and you're going to see me and our guests getting better at it. But I also have the luxury of knowing which guests are ahead of us, because we've pre-recorded some of these. Outstanding group of people coming up. Started businesses, taking businesses to the next level. And this is not just about business, but business and life so interact and commingle that if you look at the two together, or you're just looking at any kind of change in your life you want to make, you can learn from the guests and the journeys that we're taking. It's not just a business-related podcast, although that is certainly the foundation of this. It's the application of these practices in your own personal life, no matter what you're trying to do, to get better, to have a little more impact on the world around you. So let me tell you what we mean by new beginnings, fresh start. It's the first point. It's a fresh start. And right now, with the world that we live in, we're looking around and we're being forced into a new look at life. There's no doubt right now that I would have to say there's very few of us that are in the situation where we can keep repeating what we've done before. We're being forced into a situation of a fresh look and a fresh start on life. We're trying to hold on to things that we've held on to in the past, and they're just not working, or they're changing. You know, I went for a walk around the neighborhood the other day and ran across a friend of mine I have not seen in a while. And we did the usual "how are you doing" exchange, and I'm not close enough to him to have expected him to kind of open up with what he's dealing with. What he did, he goes, "I've been working from home since March." And he said, "I miss social interaction with some of the people I worked with. I miss calling on people. I miss the engagement of working directly." And that's happening to a lot of us. So this is forcing a fresh start, a new look at life. And if we can leverage this and take it for what it is, there's a message in there that we can be getting. And how does that look? What routines have we had in the past that we need to be adjusting? So it's just taking a fresh look at life, trying a few things, being comfortable with failing more often. Okay, that didn't work, so now I'm going to adjust. You're going to hear some of our guests and me personally talk about this as we go forward, about what it means to fail, what you learn from fail. We have a guest coming up that said, you know, I took this opportunity and jumped into the great unknown so I could see what it was like to fail, which is an odd kind of topic to think about. Who says they want to fail? But she had become complacent. And so many of us, I think, were complacent or kind of lulled to sleep in where we were before. And now we're in a period where we're waking up. Fresh look on life. And even in the simplest of things. The simplest of things. So let me talk my own personal routine. And this is not a great grand example of anything. But that's what life is about. It doesn't have to be so heavy. It doesn't have to be about changing the world. It doesn't have to be about pursuing something that's far bigger than yourself, although that is great and it's outstanding. But it can be in the small things. It doesn't have to be in some great gland. You don't have to be the next great entrepreneur, the next author that sells 1 million copies, or whatever that is that you want to fashion yourself after. It doesn't have to be about something great. It can be about something small. But the fresh start is going to start in those small steps. Let me give you an example. I had the same routine I've used for years, for the most part. Same morning routine I've used for years. I won't describe it in detail, but we probably all have this. You get up at a set time. If you don't get up at the set time, you feel guilty for not getting up at the set time. There's certain routines I do before I start the workday. I was living and being dictated by those routines. I had put myself in that box, in that place of complacency. Just get up and go through the motions. But what it had conditioned me to do was look at life through that method. Look at life through the routines that had been created. So what you have to do is you have to step outside of that. The smallest, most silliest of steps and examples can change your view ever so slightly, make you look back at it. So the other day I said, I'm going to change this routine. Rather than get up and do 1, 2, 3, and then go work. 1, 2, 3, go to work. Like a robot, like a machine. So let me just mix it up. I had been doing it 1, 2, 3. Make the to-do list. Review the to-do list. Start action on the to-do list. Feel guilty if you don't exercise first thing in the morning. So let's change it. Got up, went downstairs, grabbed a magazine. Now, I've been guilty of reading stuff that was self-help or business related. Somebody reminded me of that the other day. You need to read something other than those. So I grabbed this magazine that you'll often see at the checkout stands in the grocery store, and you know what I'm talking about. Grabbed it. Now, it wasn't one of those that has the gossip or the negative stuff. I didn't know that. But the first thing I did was get the cup of coffee, grab that magazine, and start reading through it. Now, in there was an article about Dick Van Dyke and Elizabeth Taylor, not together, separate, but it was a 2-page article about each one. And it wasn't the gossip and the smut and all that kind of information that we're used to reading. It was just a simple article that told me just chill out sometimes, and rather than live in that world of go, 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 just pause long enough to read something for pure enjoyment. Minor thing that I did that took about 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes. But by reading that and then looking back at what I'd been doing for almost my entire life, it said you need to take a different view of this, a different view of how you're handling things in the routines. It's those small, incremental, different view of your life that's going to create that fresh start, that new beginning, which is where we find ourselves now. Step outside of and look at it. Another thing I would recommend is this. Occasionally, take a news fast. Take a social media fast. What I mean by that, it's fast if you're not familiar with them, is don't look at the news. Don't look at social media. Turn them off. What do you hear when it's quiet? In that space, what are you thinking about? Because I know in that space of those two, we can have a tendency to jump on the bandwagon of watching the negative stuff, or who we're going to be critical of, or how we're being defined by our labels, which is happening these days. But take a fast from those things. But what you want to do in this period in this period of new beginnings is be intentional about stepping outside where you are and taking a different view of things. Because getting to that fresh start and getting to that new place, wherever that is, that new view of life, even from my perspective, it was to slow down long enough to be intentional about staying in the moment. Reading something that doesn't put you looking back at the past or looking forward into the future. Sit there long enough to read something that keeps you in the moment. Be more intentional about staying there. Because ultimately it's about this. 1% each day about getting better. Better as defined by what? Not necessarily step towards those goals, not necessarily step towards whatever that golden ring that you're chasing. Sometimes it's 1% better at just living in the moment. But with that, we're super excited to have you on this journey with us on season 3, this podcast, Soul Minded Business. We have a lot of exciting things ahead of us. And what we just recommend to you is log onto a website at soulmindedbusiness.com. Drop your email in there. You're going to see more information about our journey. Our intent there is to help you out, help our listeners out, our guests, the people working on this podcast, and in some cases, give away some free information and some free things just to help you on your own personal journey. And with that, we conclude this podcast. And as always, wish you all the best. Peace.